fights with passion, and he inspires.
Are you ready for a war?
All right, welcome back to From 8 Arbitration. Before I do anything, let me tell y'all how much I appreciate y'all reaching out all week long through calls or Facebook message or emails, texts, and expressing y'all's prayers for my daughter Hannah. That means the world to me. You have no idea. And it means the world to her. When I put it up, she was reading that. She would call me. She was getting quite emotional, just how much y'all were showing her love. And so I cannot thank y'all enough for that. Continue to pray for my little angel. She put it on her story, so I can say it, but she had a biopsy done. We got to wait a couple of weeks and see what's going on there. And again, this is on her story, so I'm not telling anything personal, but I'm afraid she's got a breast cancer that disguises itself as eczema. And why that's so cruel is Hannah has always dealt with eczema, so she didn't think anything about it until it got to a certain point, and she went, and the doctors were very concerned. So I just want to tell y'all thank you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. So many people reached out about that. I can't thank you enough, and I love you. I love you. And so, hey, that's family. That's family to me. And so I cannot thank you enough. So on behalf of my beautiful daughter, Hannah, and I know that she would want me to say the same thing, thank y'all so much for reaching out and expressing y'all's prayers and love for her. All right. Now, I'm in a hotel room. I'm holding the microphone, and so it's probably going to sound terrible. But we have been hit with a devastating ice storm. And I'm talking about devastating. If you follow me on Facebook, I put up videos and pictures. And we back up to Radnor Lake. It's a protected kind of forestry type thing. And all day, trees have been falling, cracking, exploding. And I put on my second post, it sounds like King Kong coming through my neighborhood. And the trees it's been cracking all day long. So we have no power. No power. And so they said it may be a week to 10 days before we get power. And I don't even think my post office has power. I read somewhere where they said Belmead was kind of in the same shape. It's been devastated as well. And so I've got my laptop. I've got a microphone. I'm holding in my hand like I'm singing karaoke. And but I'm going to do just some short episodes. We're going to call these Snow Day Miniseries. All right. I'll do just a few minutes, do some tomorrow, may do another tomorrow night. I may have 3 or 4 by the time this week is over with. Just depends on how long I'm at this hotel, because we came to this hotel. It has no TV. The elevator doesn't work, and we're on the 3rd floor. So we're bringing all of our groceries up to the 3rd floor, all of our clothes and suitcases and stuff, because the elevator doesn't work. And we, like I said, we get here and there's like, hey, you don't have any TV either. Like, damn. And so, yeah, it's been a tough day, man. Started out beautiful yesterday, snow. I was like, man, that is really pretty. Today, straight hail. And so I'm going to cover just a few things, and then I may do one again tonight. I don't know. May do one in the morning. I have no idea. I'm just in a hotel room, no TV, no elevator. But I got my beautiful wife. And so that's all we need, right? We got some heat and some lights because we have no electricity. But I'm going to do a couple of shout-outs. Then I'm going to get into an arbitration case that somebody sent me. It's a beautiful decision on more than one front. And I'm going to talk to you about that because it's something that we've talked about a long time. I'm going to read something, a national interpretive issue that labor has sent up. I'm going to discuss that a little bit, and then we'll be done with it, all right? It's not going to be a very long episode, but like I said, I'll probably do another one tomorrow morning, tomorrow evening, Tuesday morning, Tuesday evening. But I had somebody reach out, well, I had a few people reach out and asked me if, when I was talking about Spotify, the year-end results, if it shows what states, like ranking states, and it does not. Spotify does not do that. They don't list states by which state has the most listens on down the line. Now, my PodServe does, but it's like I said, you can cut this in about half because PodServe does not cover Spotify, but it does have the leading one for PodServe is, I believe, Apple Podcasts by far is the leader on PodServe, Apple Podcasts. It's got about 90%, maybe 85%, and then it has several other servers, but it does not have Spotify. But it does have a ranking of states, all the states, and it's got all the other countries that listen. And so I will do the top 12. How about the top 12 states? I'm not going to go through all 50. But the top 12 states according to listens. Which ones have the most downloads according to PodServe? Now, again, this does not have Spotify. But the top 12, number one, the number one state based off of downloads, Texas. Texas is number one. Number two, California. California is number two. Number three, the beautiful ones, Illinois. Illinois is number three. Number four, Ohio. Number four is Ohio. Number five is New York. New York is number five. Number six, Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is number six. Number seven, Florida. Florida is number seven. Number eight, Michigan. Michigan is number eight. Number nine, the volunteer state, Tennessee. Tennessee is number nine. Number 10, Washington. Washington is number 10. Number 11, Georgia. Georgia is number 11. And number 12, Indiana. Indiana is number 12. So that's the top 12 as far as downloads for the time that it started. And this has 1,100,000 downloads on it, okay? And like I said, it's kind of half because Spotify kind of mirrors these numbers, all right? So that's where we're at. So Texas, I appreciate you coming in number one. But that's some good numbers. There's some good numbers on there as far as listens. So that's great stuff. Let's do a shout out. Had somebody send me one, and I'm going to do it. It says, will you please lift up our brother out of branch 1037 in Amarillo, Texas, up in prayers. Amarillo was experiencing snow and ice, and temperatures were 6 degrees with a wind chill in the negatives. Our brother was in an LLV parked across the street and was walking a package to the customer's house. After placing the package on the doorstep, he was walking back to his vehicle. There were some vehicles parked along the curb, and when he walked out in the street, he was hit by a vehicle on the passenger front at approximately 15 to 20 miles an hour and was immediately thrown 10 to 15 feet across the street. Worst part of it all is our brother was the victim of yet another hit and run and was left to lay on the snowy street until a customer finally saw him laying on the road approximately 30 minutes later. He was rushed to the hospital by ambulance, and as far as we know right now, he has some broken bones in his back and possible messed up one of his knees. Thanks, brother. From the Texas Panhandle, we ask that our brothers and sisters in light blue lift this carrier up in their prayers and ask for God's healings so he can get back to work and support his family. So absolutely. I'll definitely say a prayer for my brother there. Anytime I hear anything about light blue, that's going to get full attention, right? Because that's what it's all about. That's the only thing it's about to me is light blue. And so, absolutely, there you have it. I'm going to read this letter, and I'm going to discuss it just a little bit, my opinion on it. And I could be wrong about this, but this is my opinion. It was a letter sent out by Lloyd. James Lloyd. And, that's Barner's counterpart. And it says, Dear Paul, in accordance with Article 15, the above referenced grievance seeking payments beyond those provided for in Article 17.4 was referred to me for review of a possible interpretive issue. The Postal Service has determined that a national interpretive issue does exist. Therefore, the above referenced grievance and any similar grievances and or grievances seeking similar remedies should be held pending the outcome of the national dispute. The Postal Service's case number for this national interpretive issue is, and it has the case number there, please contact me to discuss this dispute at a mutually scheduled time. So I'm going to read that first part again. In accordance with Article 15, the above referenced grievance seeking payments beyond those provided for in Article 17.4 was referred to me for the review of a possible interpretive issue. The Postal Service has determined that national interpretive issues do exist. Therefore, the above referenced grievance and any similar grievances and or grievances seeking similar remedies should be held pending the outcome of the national dispute. So when I read a letter like that, if I was to take that to arbitration, and any advocate knows, now I don't have the thing that covers my microphone, so there's no telling what this is going to sound like. Like I said, I'm holding it in my hand. Normally you have that little spit guard in front. I don't have that. I'm just holding it in so there's no telling what this is going to sound like. So if it sounds terrible, I apologize. In arbitration, when I have a letter like this, I'm going to restrict management from arguing anything other than 17.4, because that's what this says, seeking payments beyond those provided for in Article 17.4. So when I go to arbitration, if management attempts to get outside that 17.4 language, I'm going to object to that because it says 17.4. It did not say anything other than 17.4. And so we know what does 17.4 talk about? 17.4 talks about payment of stewards. All right, so 17.4, payment of stewards. So if management wants to take something interpretive nationally, and the payment of stewards, because that's what the letter stated, I'm going to hold them to 17.4. In arbitration, regionally, I'm going to do the same thing. Here's the problem. Somebody sent me this and saying, Barner explained this in leadership class last week before anything came out. It's specifically payments to stewards or the branch. Now, it does not say anything about payments to the branch in that letter. It says 17.4. That's payment to stewards. If they attempt to say, or the branch, then I'm going to object to that because they did not state anything other than Article 17.4, if that makes sense. In arbitration, I would not let them talk about the branch because you didn't state that. You said 17.4. And those cases are going to be held kind of in abeyance until this all gets settled. Say you have been awarded a specific remedy saying for each PS 1723 you don't get, or late form you get, the steward gets $100. Post office has said they are putting a hold on all those grievances like that and raising it to a national interpretive issue. They want to fight any monetary payment given that doesn't show explicit harm to the individual or branch. Now, again, if you say anything about the branch, I'm going to object to that. Management's philosophy here, ideology here, is misguided. It has nothing to do with Article 17. When we ask for an escalated monetary award, Article 17 talks about the payment of stewards. Anything escalated will deal with what article? 15. So management is attempting to kind of buffalo the system when they say Article 17.4 is explicit in what it talks about the payment to a steward must be. We're not talking about 17.4. I wouldn't even concentrate on 17.4. It means nothing to me. If they're talking about an escalated monetary award, that falls under Article 15. And so that would be my argument, is that it's gotten to a point now to where the payment of the stewards for this time has reached an egregious level because you continue to violate whatever. And so this steward is having to take these cases forward over and over and over again. And we have many arbitrators that agree with that mindset. that once you start doing things over and over and over again, then it becomes egregious, and then we must escalate a remedy, because the stewards have better things to do with their time than deal with the same issues over and over and over again. Now, if they want to incorporate the branch, who is it that pays for these grievances when you talk about the paper, when you talk about the time? That's the branch. The branch uses the paper and copies. If I'm having to deal with, say, in this installation here, opt-in grievances, those grievances become excessive. So why should the union be held accountable for those when management intentionally violates the contract or egregiously violates the contract? Why should the union be on the hook for that when you can't learn? You refuse to educate yourself. And so the union is having to bear the brunt of that cost because you can't educate yourself. You can't follow the contract. And so therefore we will say that the branch is due a certain amount of money, and arbitrators agree with that. Matter of fact, this is nothing new. We had arbitrators, August and Roberts, on our panels that paid the branch and paid stewards, and labor kicked them off the panel because of that kind of intimidation. So this is nothing new. But management is misguided in this argument that Article 17.4 calls for a very specific amount to be paid, and therefore there will be nothing else paid. That argument is misguided. It's Article 15, and that's what we're going to concentrate on. And so that's my opinion on the letter. So when Barner says, well, it's dealing with payment of stewards in the branch, I wouldn't entertain the branch. It didn't say that. Even when it says similar grievances. No, you said 17.4. And so 17.4 is what I would concentrate on. And that's part of the problem of Barner, is that he's not been an advocate. He doesn't understand that process. The only thing he knows, like Renfro, is what he's been told. And so when Lloyd came to me, I'd say, well, y'all can discuss 17.4. I'm going to introduce Article 15, where y'all have become egregious, and we're not going to talk about the branch. But I'm afraid of this discussion where it talks about, we'll discuss this later. I'm afraid of that discussion because Barner does not agree with an escalated monetary award. He's also the one that goes in with Lloyd and talks about the cease and desist. We'll no longer do cease and desist. My problem with Barner handling any of these things, and that's the reason I can't wait to be executive vice president, is because when I go into these meetings, they will understand, unlike Barner, we will never call an arbitrator to amend a decision that benefited the union. That will never happen. I will never go in front of the DRT and say, I agree with labor that we can no longer do a cease and desist, or we're no longer going to do an escalated monetary award. I don't agree with that. My position will always be educate yourself, and until you do, we're going to continue with an escalated monetary award. That's the only weapon we have. And so I'm fearful of that. Barner has a pattern of that where he talks about, you remember in Region 2, when the business agent out there put up no fight. And that's the reason I'm excited about Debbie Dixon taking over in that region. She'll win that region easily, is because you have to put up a fight for your people. And when Barner went in there and amended that, told the arbitrator to amend that decision where he was saying, hey, y'all been coming here so much over this same issue that the Postal Service is going to pay full freight on this here. Y'all going to pay the union share as well because y'all aren't learning, and I don't know what else to do. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say anytime y'all come in front of me, y'all are going to pay the union share as well. And that would cut out on a lot of this noncompliance. Trust me, when those things start happening, you talking about arbitration being a weapon. If you're taking that same thing and they know that, hey, we're going to go in here and we're going to pay both shares, you're going to see compliance. Unfortunately, Barner felt a need to take it upon himself to call the arbitrator and amend that decision. Devastating position for the union and that region, and that's unfortunate. And I don't know why that business agent isn't still raising hell. And I believe it's just because he's a Renfro lackey. But, yeah, I think that on that letter, that's my position. When you talk about 17.4, first thing, I'm going to hold you to 17.4. We're not going to get outside of 17.4. That's payment to the steward. If you say payment to the branch, you didn't state that. You said 17.4. You should have said payment to stewards or the branch. And so when Barnard talks about that's payment to the stewards and the branch, he's already buying into that bullshit. And I wouldn't do that. I would tell Lloyd, we're going to hold you to 17.4. And the argument for us would be Article 15. It's become a point of noncompliance. We're doing anything we possibly can to bring you on to compliance. And so if that's pay the steward, it's pay the stewards. I've got a lot of sites where arbitrators have paid the stewards. If it's pay the branch, we'll pay the branch. I've got a lot of sites where arbitrators have paid the branch. Whatever it's going to take to bring management into compliance, that's what I want. That's what I need, all right? And so that's the letter, and that's my position on the letter. Now, we have this weather all across the country. It's devastating us. Nashville's getting crushed. We're not the only place. All across the country, it's probably the worst I've ever seen it. Absolutely destroying the country, this weather. If you listen, there's an Act of God episode. JB did it. It's episode 137. 137. Go listen to that episode. It's got everything that you'll ever need for Act of God grievances. Everything. AJ Bro sent me a decision here, and I'm going to read it for you. And it's one that he usually uses. And I'm going to pull it up, and I'm going to read it. And I'll do some more of these tomorrow probably. An Act of God grievance. And like I said, episode 137. Episode 137. If you go to from8arbitration.com, pull up episode 137, it'll have everything that you need for Act of God grievances. Okay? And this is in front of arbitrator Christopher Miles, one of my favorite people. And so Miles and I had a very tumultuous relationship. We would argue with each other damn near the whole hearing. And I've been in front of him a bunch. But we would get into it just about every damn time. And it's funny because Miles, when he got off the panel, he got on, what car dealership was that? Not dealership, car maker, Saturn. He got on a panel for Saturn. And he calls me one day. I'm out delivering mail. And he says, "Hey, Corey, it's Christopher Miles." And I was like, "Hey, Arbitrator Miles, how you doing?" He's like, "I'm good." He's like, "I'm on a panel, and I believe it's near you. It's Saturn." I said, "Oh, yeah, Spring Hill." He said, "Yeah." He said, "Hey, when I come to town, I'd love to call you, and let's meet up and have dinner." I was like, "Do what?" Because we would get into it, man. Some knockdown drag-outs in this arbitration. And I remember he would ask questions of me, and I was so snarky and stuff with him. But he loved me for some reason. But we would absolutely get into it in arbitrations. And so he's kind of a labor-friendly. He's not a very union-friendly person, kind of labor-friendly. But anyway, he got a good decision here. And it's 31918. See, 31918. It's Christopher Miles. And it's out of South Carolina. And for the union is Don Lyerly. And so it says the class action grievance challenging the denial of administrative leave to the letter carriers at the Aiken main office and the Summerall station in Aiken, South Carolina for February 12th and February 13th are sustained. Based upon the particular circumstances presented in this case, it is found that the Postal Service was arbitrary and capricious in determining that the acts of God leave, as provided in Section 519 of the ELM, did not apply. Consequently, the annual leave used by the letter carriers to cover their absences on February 12th and February 13th shall be restored, and the time shall be changed to administrative leave. Now, whenever you look at arbitration sites, that's what I love about them, is that it's going to give you the language. And you say, what do I even need to look at for an act of God grievance? Now, go to episode 137. It'll have all the information there for you. But arbitration sites are very good because that's what it's going to do. Section 519 of the ELM, that's what we're going to be looking for, okay? But I'm going to read the discussion and then go to from8arbitration.com, find episode 137. Why you want to do that is because when you look up episode 137 on FromAToArbitration.com. It's going to have all the sites, all the contractual language. Print that out. You can download it, print it out. It'll be right there for you to put in your case file. All right? Discussion and findings. The 2 class action grievances considered herein were filed to challenge the denial of administrative leave to the letter carriers at the Aiken main office and the Sumrall station due to a snow and ice storm on February 12th and February 13th of 2014. The record developed in this case reveals that there was a destructive winter ice storm. Does that sound familiar? We're going through it right now. With rain and sleet in Aiken County, South Carolina, that began on Wednesday, February 12th. The temperature, which was below freezing, resulted in icy roads which were covered with fallen trees and other debris, as well as massive power outages. Now, this storm here, I believe Nashville has more power outages than the entire country. I think that's what I read. But that's not just for Nashville. This can go on anywhere. This is for anybody. The governor of South Carolina issued a state of emergency for the area, and Aiken qualified for FEMA relief. The union asserts that the damage done to the area made it unsafe to work on the street, and the bulk of the carriers' work is performed on the street. Although some of the carriers reported for work on February 12th, the clock rings show that 75% of them left early, and no carriers reported for work on February 13th. The union submits that the carriers should receive administrative leave under the provisions of 519.21 of the ELM, which addresses acts of God and provides for administrative leave in situations that involve community disasters that are general rather than personal in scope and impact, and prevent groups of employees from working or reporting to work. According to the union, all 3 criteria for the acts of God administrative leave were present during this period of time at the Aiken main office and the Sumrall station. The Postal Service, however, argues that the union fell short of establishing a contract violation as the files are devoid of any documentation to establish the efforts of the employees to attempt to report to work on February 12th and February 13th. Now, we'll always get statements, and those statements need to be detailed. On this date, I made every attempt possible to get to work. The streets were covered. They were icy. They were blocked. I couldn't get this way here. All those things need to be stated, okay? Don't just write a statement saying it snowed and I couldn't come in. Do some kind of help for me. Say something that, I was backing out of my driveway. The roads were impassable. The trees were down. I've got pictures of all this stuff here. Stuff like that. It'll help out. It submits that the union did not produce any evidence from any of the carriers as to why they were prevented from working or reporting to work. The Postal Service rejects the union's contentions that before making the determination to deny administrative leave, management must investigate whether or not the employees could have reported to work if they had exercised reasonable diligence. In this regard, the Postal Service asserts that the burden of proof rests with the union as the moving party to show a reasonable diligence by the employees, but none was shown. In addition, the Postal Service emphasized that some employees reported for duty and performed work on the days in question, albeit they may have requested to leave early. Several arbitration decisions were submitted by the union to support its position that administrative leave should have been granted in this instance. In a case sustained by arbitrator Martin Soyle, it was noted that the key factor of whether administrative leave pay was awarded by arbitrators depended upon whether the disaster act of God truly impacted the ability of the affected Postal Service employees to report for work or continue working. And if it was shown the act of God was severe and widespread and clearly prevented groups of employees from working or reporting to work, arbitrator Neil Bernstein pointed out that the criteria for granting of administrative leave for acts of God are precisely spelled out in Section 519.21, which is binding upon the service. There is no requirement that operations must be curtailed, stations closed, or work unavailable, nor does it matter that a significant number of employees actually did report for work. The manual requires only that groups of employees must be prevented. Arbitrator Bernstein went on to emphasize that Section 519.213 imposes a duty on the management to investigate whether employees claiming administrative leave could have reported with reasonable diligence. No such investigation appears to have been made in this case, and he found that In denying administrative leave because of no curtailment of operations, local management clearly was applying a test different from the one contained in the manual. In another case involving letter carriers in Chattanooga, Tennessee, arbitrator Linda Byers directed that the employees who were unable to report for work would have their leave balances adjusted. Having determined that management abused its discretion when it denied administrative leave because the determination was made that those who did not report could have reported had they exercised reasonable diligence. Similarly, in the case at hand, it is found that the Postal Service was arbitrary and capricious and in violation of the provisions of Section 519.21 of the ELM when it denied administrative leave paid to the carriers at the Aiken main office and the Summerall station during the ice storm on February 12th and February 13th. Section 519.211 of the ELM provides that acts of God involve community disasters such as fire, flood, or storms. The disaster situation must be general rather than personal in scope and impact. It must prevent groups of employees from working or reporting to work. In Section 519.23, determining the cause of absence, it states that postmasters and other appropriate postal officials determine whether absences from duty allegedly due to acts of God were in fact due to the such cause, or whether the employee or employees in question could with reasonable diligence have reported for work. There is no dispute that there was a severe winter storm that caused icy roads conditions, fallen trees and branches, and numerous power outages. In addition to FEMA and the National Guard, electrical workers were brought in from other states to remove the fallen trees and restore power to the businesses and residences. However, the Postal Service apparently failed to consider the dangerous conditions which may have prevented the carriers from reporting to work on the days in question, or the seriousness of the conditions which continued to worsen and caused the employees to leave work early on February 12th. The union's burden of proof was satisfied. There was a disaster situation in Aiken County caused by an act of God. By all accounts, the disaster situation was general in scope and impact for the entire county, and the employees were prevented from working or reporting to work. Contrary to the assertion of the Postal Service, it is the postmaster or other appropriate postal officials to determine whether the absences were in fact due to such cause, or whether the employees could, with reasonable diligence, have reported for duty. No such investigation appeared to have been made in this case. Consequently, the grievances are sustained, and the annual leave used by the letter carriers to cover their absences on February 12th and February 13th shall be restored, and the time shall be changed to administrative leave. And so there's your great decision. A fantastic decision. I appreciate A.J. Bro sending that to me. And it's from one of my favorites, Christopher Miles. And it's 31918. See 31918. Again, go to episode 137. It's got everything you'll need for acts of God's grievances. And there's going to be a bunch filed this week. A bunch. All right. We've got a bunch of things coming up as far as weather. It is devastating, and it continues to do so across the entire country. Okay. Lastly, I'm going to read another decision, and I'll be done. Again, I'm going to do several episodes over the next few days. This is my Snow Day miniseries. All right? It's my Snow Day miniseries, and they're going to be short episodes, and this is going to be one of them. But there's a decision sent to me from my brother up in Buffalo, Mr. David Groskoff, and it's another one out of his branch. And it's done by Andrew Harrison. Now, this dude's on a fucking roll. And I've read several of his. He is killing it. And that's, I know I'm putting a curse on him. I'm going to knock on wood. I'm an advocate, never wants you to do that. They never want accolades because you put the jinx on them. But he's killing it. And so this one has to deal with stationary events based off of GPS data. Okay? Now, remember when they came out with these metrics, that was one of the things that I was going off on the most. And I was reading something the other day, and somebody says my podcast is just turned into a bitch fest. And so that's all I do anymore. I just bitch about things. And so it's just turned into a bitch fest. And so that was one of the things that I was bitching about, is the stationary events. because I thought that as soon as you saw those metrics come out in that the whatever that thing is, that area newsletter, whatever, from that AVP saying, hey, we have metrics on an hour office time and also stationary events, National should have immediately sent out a template saying, hey, here's metrics. They're probably going to start using this against us. Hour office time, here's a template. Hey, one of these metrics is going to be stationary events. Here's our position on that. We're sending out a national template on these metrics of stationary events. That's what we should have done. We didn't do it. And it allowed management to get all their feet in the door and hammer us based on that stuff there. We failed miserably on that. And the good thing is with James Henry coming in is that he'll have the director of education, Paul Bolanger, and those things will happen. You got to have your pulse on the workroom floor. You got to know what's going on, okay? And then when you see things like whiteboards, something like that, stationary events, something like that, hour office time, something like that, when you see these things, you immediately put out a national template. That's how I feel. Now, some of these business agents, they don't like that. They want to handle their own business in their own region. And that's the reason we have 15 different unions, because you have 15 different regions. And some of these business agents don't want to give it that power. That power means everything to them. My business agent's like that. He's power hungry, greedy, and full of pride, and he's destroyed this region. And so when that happens, your region suffers, like my region is suffering now. You've got New Orleans with about 18,000 cases pending B, and we're more worried about cutting people out of training because of who they support. And that's what we're dealing with now. We got to get out of that mindset and understand that we're all the same. We all represent the same light blue. And that's one of the things that's going to happen when we take over, is we're going to be one union representing one people, light blue. And that's the only thing that matters. And that's how every region is going to be run, is one mindset, light blue. That's it. And we don't care about anything else. And so I got off on that, didn't I? But this decision was sent to me. And it's when we talk about things that we've talked about on this podcast before, this is a beautiful decision to show that, okay, to emphasize some of the things that we've been talking about. And it was a removal, and it was on a carrier that had a 14-day, 2 14 days, and a 7-day, and based off of conduct. And this one is dealing with partially stationary events, okay? And I'm going to read the discussion. Now, it's got a lot of stuff. It goes through a lot of preliminary things in here about contractual provisions, and several pages on this. And here's one of the things that when I talk about, I'll just read it and then I'll talk about it. It's on page 7 of 14. Management produced evidence of enforcement of the rule with comparative employees. One such comparative employee was interviewed for deviating from authorized lunch locations and expanding her breaks as listed on the PS Form 1564A. The investigative interview form provided explanation that her lunch break was combined with a comfort break. Like grievant Paco's, conduct was flagged by REMS and GPS. Distinct from grievant, but that she was also observed for several days before the disciplinary steps were initiated. The record does not contain any discipline issued. Supervisor Yacheda, whatever, testified that she did not conduct a street observation of grievant on 8/6 or 8/7. She did, however, do street observation of him in April of 2025 and completed Form 3999. See Exhibit J3, pages 159 through 169. The PS Form 3999 showed that the grievant was under time by about 2.5 hours on that day. This was submitted after the issuance of the notice of removal and after management's response to the request for information in informal A. I'm going to read that again because I'm going to talk about this for a bit. This was submitted after the issuance of the notice of removal and after management's response to the request for information at an informal A. So they put in this information, the 3999s, okay? After the request for information was submitted, after the notice of removal was issued, as included in the basis for just cause with an email from the supervisor to Leslie Solis, management, and postmaster Casey Linderman on 10/7. However, management admitted that the April 2025 3999 was not part of the review and concurrence packet and was not considered when issuing the notice of removal. The email states as follows. Now, I'm going to address this right here. However, management admitted that the April 2025 3999 was not part of the review and concurrence packet and was not considered when issuing the notice of removal. Now, here's why I love this, and here's why this is so beautiful. We've always talked about in requesting information for discipline. What do we request? Any and all information that management used to issue this discipline. That's what I want initially. I want to know what you used, okay? Any and all information management used to issue this discipline. That's what I put in. As soon as I get the discipline, the second Carrie hands me discipline, I'm putting in an information request. Any and all information management used to issue this discipline. Why? Because it locks you in. Just like in this case here. It locks management in. This is what you used. When I get it, I'm going to number it. Here's what you gave me. 1 through 20, 1 through 10, 1 through 15, right? This is the information that you gave me. Yes, I'm going to sign off on this information request that this is what you gave me and the date you gave it to me. All right? So we're both in agreement. You gave me 20 pages. Why is that important? Because those 20 pages are what were used to concur on. All right? Here's what's funny about that. JB was in training down, and I can't remember where he was at, maybe Biloxi, maybe a regional training. And he was part of the audience, okay? During the training was a DRT member for Alabama, Mississippi. She was doing the training. And she asked, now, what would you ask for on this discipline request? They were going over different scenarios. And JB raises his hand, yes, I'm going to ask for any and all information that management used to issue the discipline. And she tries to kind of belittle him. She's like, does everybody agree with that? Does anybody agree with that? Looking around, who agrees with that? Now, why wouldn't you ask for this? Because you know what this is. Why wouldn't you ask for this? Or why wouldn't you ask for that? JB says, I don't want to get into that. I want to know what you used to issue the discipline. So I'm going to ask for any and all discipline that management used to issue this discipline. Or any and all information management used to issue the discipline. That's what I want. Well, you're going to need this. That's the controlling document. And you're going to need this. And you're going to need that. He said, I don't want anything other than what they used to issue the discipline. Now, if they give me that and I need those things later, I will put in another request to specifically ask for those things. Who agrees with that? Who agrees with that? JB was spot on. Don't ever ask for specifics on the very first information request. And to think that somebody like that was on our DRT is frightening, and they're doing training. But you always ask for any and all information that management used to issue the discipline. If I have specific things that I want, I will ask for those later. But I want to know what you used. What did you use? What was concurred on to issue this discipline? And we're going to document that. And then when I don't have these other things, I'm going to request for things. This is why. However, management admitted that the April 2025 3999 was not part of the review and concurrence, and she holds management accountable for that later. Was not considered when issuing the notice of removal. The email states as follows. I sent all this to you to help paint the picture as to why he basically drew this attention to himself. Now, this is the supervisor saying, this is why I sent you all this information late. The 99 included, which was done 4:15, showed him getting done at 2 p.m. I watched him walk in the door that day, and I told him that he shouldn't ever need to submit a 3996 moving forward. Now, I'm going to blister any witness on this because what you're doing here is intimidation, right? You're trying to remove my right under reporting requirements, okay? You're saying I told him that he shouldn't ever need to submit a 3996 moving forward. Imagine explaining that in an arbitration. We proved to him that he was not only able to finish by 4:30, he finished 2.5 hours prior. But not a few weeks later, he started submitting 3996s asking for help. Every time he was questioned, he was always just said it was to cover his butt. But he never truly needed it, and still took his full 8 hours, some days over 10 hours. Also included schedules, days that he was assigned a cut on our aux route because he had plenty of undertime to capture. On various days, he was able to complete different amounts of time worth of this cut. Some days, instead of taking 1/5 of the route, he did an entire third of it. I've also included days where he was assigned a cut on our aux route, but couldn't get to it, and never messaged the office back indicating that he's just showing up at 4:30 to clock out for the day. You can use what you need. I just thought I would include all this information to possibly help the argument in any way. So things that you think could possibly help your argument, you did not use for concurrence. And when we talk about what sub-question of just cause, was a thorough investigation completed? How can you answer that in the affirmative? How can you state yes? When you're putting things in the file after the fact, saying this may help, this information to possibly help the argument in any way. Well, the information that you're talking about should have been provided to the union in the information request. And so the advocate does a fantastic job of blistering their ass on here. And I'm going to get to the discussion and findings. Article 16 of the National Agreement contains the tenets of just cause. The 6-prong analysis should be applied to determine whether management violated the contract. Should the 6 prongs be met, then the determination must be made to ensure that the discipline is corrective rather than punitive. JCAMS pages 16.1 through 16.3. In a discharge action where management's action is found to violate basic notions of fairness or due process, the action has been reversed by many arbitrators. How arbitration works, El Corey and El Corey, the 6th edition, page 932. The industrial due process doctrine requires that the employee be given an adequate opportunity to present his or her side of the case before being discharged by the employer. Part of the reason this doctrine has been crafted and applied in labor settings is to prevent the imposition of discipline where there is little or no evidence on which to base a just cause discharge, citing Lincoln Lutheran of Racine. Therefore, consideration of due process is an integral component of the just cause analysis. A. Just cause. Is there a rule? The rule is well formulated and established by the parties. A letter carrier is supposed to utilize approved locations for comfort stops, breaks, and lunch. The rule may be excused, and deviation may be permitted with approval by management. The stand-up talk on April 4th and 5th of 2024 included a review of Handbook M41, Section 131.31, permitting deviation from the carrier's route if authorized by your manager, or if local policies concerning handling out of the sequence mail permit minor deviations. See Exhibit J3, page 656. This could, of course, include approval after the fact or good cause discovered during the investigation of a rule violation. Management cannot dispute the existence of this exception as they themselves wrote it into Handbook M41. Grievant was aware of the rules. He was present at the stand-up talks. More importantly, he met with his supervisor and completed a PS Form 1564A designating approved comfort stops and lunch stops. He signed it. He was advised of the rule during formal discussions in June 2025. In April 2025, in relation to sequence of casing as mail, he was advised that failure to follow the instructions of a supervisor could result in discipline. Thus, he was aware of the rules. However, he was not advised that minor deviations from his route would result in his removal from the U.S. Postal Service. And that goes back to is there a rule? Is there a rule? Was the employee aware of the rule? And she's made it quite clear that he was. Was the employee aware of the consequences for not obeying the rule? That's 3-pronged on that one, right? Is there a rule? Was the employee aware of the rule? Was the employee aware of the consequences for not obeying the rule? And she says, however, he was not advised that minor deviations from his route would result in his removal from the U.S. Postal Service. That's a good job by this advocate. Is the rule a reasonable rule? The rules are reasonable. Is the rule consistently and equitably enforced? The union contests that the rule is not equitably enforced. There is evidence that management did not issue discipline against a similarly situated carrier when enforcing the rule regarding deviation from the Form 1564A, approved lunch and break locations. The comparative employee deviated from her route, expanded her lunch break, and deviating from her approved lunch location. Further, the comparative employee was observed by the supervisor in doing so. However, Mr. Hall was not observed, but rather was interrogated and removed based solely on GPS data. Further discussion regarding this is contained in the investigative portion of analysis of this case. Was a thorough investigation completed? Article 16 requires a thorough and impartial investigation of the charges against the employee before issuing discipline. Handbook M39, 134.21 and 134.23 permit surveillance and observation of letter carriers. However, management must conduct said surveillance out in the open. This arbitrator has addressed this issue before in her decisions out of the Buffalo installation. Case number there. In the Buffalo case, the issue is whether the GPS data forming a cyber fence could be used to determine whether the carriers had properly scanned their parcels. In that case, the union cited arbitrator Wolitz, wherein she discussed the conditions under which management may conduct surveillance and observation of carriers. Wolitz considered a situation involving surveillance of carriers by supervisors from several blocks away. Thus, the carriers were unaware of surveillance because the supervisors were hidden. The language of M39, now she's quoting Wolitz, the language of M39, 134.21 and 134.23 is very clear. It is also very clear that the language is encompassed by Article 19 because it relates to a working condition, the conditions under which a letter carrier may be surveilled or observed. Surveillance must be conducted in an open and above-the-board manner. The manager is not to spy or use other covert techniques. Wolitz on page 9. Arbitrator Wolitz acknowledged that management has a procedure and method by which it can conduct covert surveillance of carriers when it has a suspicion of wrongdoing. However, neither suspicion nor the procedure was shown to exist in the evidence before her. As such, management was found to have violated Article 19. In the Buffalo arbitration, the union further relied on arbitrator Talmadge's decision, in this case wherein the management was held to have violated Articles 5, 19, and 41 by using the PET based on 139.99 to establish a demonstrated street time by which carriers were expected to perform daily. This Orchard Park installation New York case arose out of management's use of the performance engagement tool PET program to set the expected leave and return times for the carriers. The carriers were then required to explain why they did not make those times. As arbitrator Talmadge noted, management has both the right and ability to develop and utilize tools including computer-generated data, reports, and expectations, which are consistent with the national agreement. A tool such as GPS or breadcrumbs are tools that are consistent with the national agreement. However, the GPS and breadcrumbs are only tools, and they may not be the sole basis for discipline. The parties have established the methods for evaluating city letter carrier routes as defined in Chapter 2, now she's quoting Talmadge, of the M39 and Chapter 9 of the M41, which developed a method of averages for route evaluations. The PET is a management efficiency tool for estimating a carrier's daily workload, which uses an exact number of hours from one distinct day. The PET derives its information from DOAS. Although management has the right to utilize this efficiency tool to assist in its assessment of the carrier's workload and auxiliary assistance requests, as noted in a number of Step 4 settlements, the PET cannot be the sole basis for disapproving auxiliary assistance or approving more time than requested. Arbitrator Talmadge relies on the two Step 4 settlements, which establish that the DOAS and computer-generated efficiency tools may not be the sole basis of work hour expectations and do not replace a supervisor's ability or responsibility to make decisions. Supervisors are to continue evaluating requests for assistance, PS Form 3996, and assess any unusual circumstances or conditions that have occurred. The DOAS projected leave time cannot be the sole basis for disapproving auxiliary assistance or approving more time than requested, citing the 9/16/2011 Step 4 settlement and the 11/14 Step 4 settlement. Both arbitrator Talmadge and Woolwich found the manner of supervision, including covert surveillance, hiding in the bushes, and computer-generated data, affected the working conditions and are thus covered by Article 5. Now here, I'm going to stop and talk about this just a second. Both arbitrators Talmadge and Woolwich found that the manner of supervision, including covert surveillance, hiding in the bushes, and computer-generated data, affected the working conditions and are thus covered by Article 5. Now, if y'all remember, I used to get off on this. My business agent, the one we have now, sold us out in this installation because we had that case going forward where I had that email, if y'all remember, where management was spying on us using covert techniques. They're sitting at a desk, and they were accusing of us doing things that were on the street. And my position was Section 134 of the M39 is specific. If you see anything, you have any evidence of any loitering or anything like that, you must come out and follow me, right? That's what it states. You must accompany the carrier on the street, and that's very clear. My business agent bought into labor's bullshit, saying that, hey, those are not working conditions covered in Article 5. That falls under National Arbitrator Nolan's decision, where those things are not only grievances pertaining to wages, hour, and working conditions can come forward. And my business agent bought it. I was begging him not to. I was like, please let me go forward with this. JB was the formal A. I was going to be the advocate. I had the case already. I said, do not withdraw this case. Let me lose it. Do not withdraw it. Management is feeding you a line of shit. And what did he do? He withdrew it. And so here you have two arbitrators, regional, saying that it did affect working conditions, are thus covered in Article 5. And that's what we were saying. And it's just another way of my business agent completely screwing over this region. And they got a good business agent up there with David Grosskopf. And so congratulations to them. He will let y'all go forward with things that y'all win. So, but yeah, those are covered under working conditions under Article 5. Therefore, management must follow the requirements set forth by the national agreement regarding surveillance. It must be out in the open. And this is the case that we should have put forward when we came out with those metrics, stationary events. We should have put out cases, national templates to address it, and we didn't. And that's because most of our business agents, like mine, are too scared to fight for anything at all other than their job. The purpose of the investigation is to determine whether the employee committed the offense for which he is charged. In the present case, management's sole basis for issuing discipline was the GPS data, showing that the grievant had extended break times based on his stationary time and that he had taken a lunch break at Tosta Pizza, which was around the corner from his authorized lunch break location, Subway. The purpose of the investigative interview is to give the employee the opportunity to explain his actions. His explanation should be given weight when determining whether or not discipline is warranted, and if so, what discipline is warranted. And that's a beautiful sentence. Why? Because most of the time, investigative interviews are just things management has to go through to give us discipline, right? That's an inconvenience to them. Let me go ahead and do this investigative interview so I can give them this discipline I've already typed up. That's basically what an II is for. That's why I always tell a carrier when they're going in for an II, I say, hey, look, this investigative interview, it's not for management. It's for me when they issue the discipline, okay? So make sure you take time to answer the questions truthfully, correctly, and to the best of your ability, okay? And if you don't know something, just say, I don't know. Don't make up something. Just say, I'm not sure. I'm not aware. I can't remember. I don't know. It's okay to do that. And so that's why we go into investigative interview. I've always said, it's for me. It's not for management. They've already determined what they're going to do. And that's what she says. The purpose of the investigative interview is to give the employee the opportunity to explain his actions. His explanation should be given weight when determining whether or not discipline is warranted, and if so, what discipline is warranted. Mr. Hogg explained that his first choice, Wendy's, had a drive-through line which was excessively long. He admitted going to an unauthorized location and explained it was only around the corner from the alternate authorized location, Subway. When asked why he didn't go to Subway, he stated he had gotten sick when he ate there. Thus, he did not want to go there because of a health risk. One might ask why the grievant didn't simply change his PS Form 1564A. However, management did not ask this question nor offer it. One might ask why the grievant didn't call for permission to substitute Tosta Pizza for Subway on that date. Again, management didn't ask this question, nor did they advise him that he must make the call before deviating from his route. One might ask also why grievance explanations were neither investigated further nor believed that it's faced by management, but instead used a basis for the highest form of discipline removal. Regarding the alleged expanded breaks, these are based on stationary time, recorded by GPS. Grievant gave explanation regarding his work condition that day, mail volume, street conditions, and attempted to follow the timeline. His explanations fell on deaf ears. Management did no additional investigation to determine whether his explanations were accurate for the dates in question. Further, bias against grievant is demonstrated by the supervisor's email adding additional information which was not part of the review and concurrence packet and was not produced in response to the union's request for information in Informal A. That's why you do that. That's why you do that. When JB in that training said, I want to know, I want everything that you use to issue this discipline. That's the only thing that I want. On my information request I'm going to turn in on the very second I get disciplined, I want to know the information, data, whatever you use to issue this discipline. And when I get that, we're going to document that, and we're going to sign off on it that this is what management provided for this very reason. And this is a great job of this advocate. Further, bias against grievant is demonstrated by the supervisor's email adding additional information which was not part of the review and concurrence packet and was not produced in response to the union's request for information at Informal A. Therefore, management did not conduct a thorough and impartial investigation of the events of August 2025 and therefore did not meet their burden of proof to show the grievant committed the offenses for which he is charged. That's devastating. Why? Because an advocate says, hey, was this part of the original packet that the union, when they requested the information? No, I turned this in after the removal. What for? What would that? Why would that be necessary? Well, just in case they need these additional facts or additional contentions or additional information. Well, hang on just a second. If you're charged under Article 16 with performing a thorough and investigative interview, right? If that's his day in court to answer the charges being brought against him, how do you feel like you did a thorough investigation if you're putting in information after the investigative interview? After the request for information, after the notice of removal, you're still adding information that you feel may be helpful. That's proven our position that a thorough investigation was not completed, and so the advocate did a fantastic job there. Was the severity of the discipline reasonably related to the infraction itself and in line with that usually administered, as well as to the seriousness of the employee's past record? Grievant admitted that he deviated from his route in the approved lunch location. The question now becomes whether the severity of discipline is reasonably related to the infraction itself. As we can see from the comparative employee, removal is a far cry from a reasonable discipline for deviation when sitting in line at Wendy's would likely have taken as long or longer, thus expanding the grievance lunch break. Given that management did not warrant grievant that he could be fired in such a circumstance, no discipline is warranted. Was the disciplinary action taken in a timely manner? We need not address timeliness given the management did not have just cause. And the award, she threw it out, expunged it, and brought him back with full back pay. And so that's a fantastic decision. Why? It covers several fronts. We talked about stationary events based solely on GPS data, discipline based on that. They addressed that here. A very good decision for us based on that, okay, because they were hot and heavy, and city carriers were having to fight them off. We were getting no help, barely any help from our business agents, and no help from national. And so those things will change. I promise you that. We're going to get back into addressing things nationally national templates that'll be coming from Paul Bolanger. Also, a very good decision on something that some people don't even think about, things that we've been talking about for a long time. When you get disciplined, what are you going to ask for? Any and all information management used to issue this discipline, period. That's it. Any and all information management used to issue this discipline. When we get that, we're going to sit right there in front of management, and we're going to say, all right, now let's go through this packet. You gave me 20 pages, okay? We're going to number these pages 1 through 20. This is what you gave me, all right? I'm going to sign off the union and receive the information on this date. That way, when you go to the Formal A meeting and management shows up with 15 additional pages, you can make that argument, all right? We've already gotten the discipline. We asked for any and all information management used. And at the Formal A meeting, after the shop steward had his 14 days to investigate a possible grievance, I get that information and I look through that information. Now you have robbed me that opportunity, so that's a violation of Article 15 as well as 17 and 31, because I have 14 days that I'm going to get this information. I'm going to look it over. Do I need to ask any questions based on the information? Do I need anything else? So you've robbed the informal A, the very first step, of that opportunity to investigate that information that you just brought to me at formal step A. He has 14 days, and now that's wasted because you brought to me 10 additional pages at the formal A step. Okay, so I'm going to raise that contention. And also I'm going to say the same thing that this advocate did. That wasn't part of the initial packet. That wasn't part of the concurring packet. So now we have either an improper concurrence or a violation of 17. You concurred on it, but yet you didn't give it to me to consider when I was using my 14 days to investigate the grievance. All right? Fantastic decision by a damn good advocate, man. We need many more. And let me tell you something. Advocates, get yourselves ready, because when we take over, we're going back into arbitration. Arbitration is going to be a weapon again. We're going to need all hands on deck when we take over this coming year, all right, when the CLC takes over. Arbitration, we're getting back into arbitration. Advocates, get yourself ready. Start reading as many sites as you can on whatever topics, okay? Get yourselves ready. There's not going to be any laziness in our advocates anymore. We're going full steam ahead, man. Y'all are going to be busy. Busy. All right? So get yourselves ready. Andrew Harrison, another great job, my brother. Damn good job. Y'all are killing it up there. Fantastic. So that's this episode. All right, that's this episode. And I hope it turned out all right. I hope it sounded okay. I cannot tell because I'm holding the microphone, like I said, like I'm doing karaoke. So I don't know what this is going to sound like. But there's an episode. I'll do another one tomorrow. May get into some more acts of God, some more cases, because this is going to be a huge one for us. Act of God coming up is going to be massive for us due to this weather that just crushed most of the country. Again, go to FormABleArbitration.com, episode 137, all right, and get that. I love you. I love you. Again, thank you so much for reaching out about my daughter, my angel, and just keep her in her prayers, all right, that everything's going to come back all right, and we just know it is. And so I love you, Light Blue. I cannot wait. I cannot wait to get in there and start fighting for you like the good old days, right, putting the letter carriers first and not bending over to management any longer, okay? And that's coming. I promise it's coming. Good days are coming. So y'all have a fantastic rest of the day. Please be careful. This is not over, all right? Temperatures are dropping still across this country. Be safe. Safety first. Mail does not matter. Safety first. Let us fight for admin leave rather than you come in and then jeopardizing yourself to put bulk rate in somebody's box, okay? Safety first. I love you. I'll talk to y'all tomorrow. All right, bye.